Maintaining headroom number 3. So again, review for test number 1. Felt it was worth making a video for this there, so you can kind of look at it on your own. So maintaining headroom, so kind of like a renovation job. So the stairwell opening is existing. We have to try and make sure that we fit the staircase within that stairwell opening. So to get the unit run, we have to use the stairwell opening. So let's start by playing around with our total rise and then determining the number of risers, right? So the first thing that we could do there is get the number of risers. So I'll write down all the formulas here. So total rise divided by 7 is going to get us going there. So our total rise is, make sure you're reading that correctly. So we're given a total rise of 9 foot 7 1/4. Headroom is 80, and an upper construction of 11 1/4, and a stairwell opening of 10 foot 10 and 5/16. Calculate the unit rise, unit run, and a total run of the staircase. So 9 feet is 108 inches plus 7, so that's 115 and 1/4, so 0.25. And then 10 foot 10 and 5/16, that's 120, plus 10 is 130. 5/16 is 3,125. So if we're unsure how to get 5/16, basically just go 5 divided by 16. And that'll give you the 3.125. So I kind of have all my numbers ready to roll here. That one's already in inches. It's basically 11.25 there. Okay. So now let's plug in the numbers. So that's 115.25 divided by 7. So 115.25 divided by 7 is going to give me 16 point something. I'm going to just go with that number that's in the calculator for now. Second thing I'm going to get there is my unit rise. So total rise divided by number of risers. So 115.25 divided by 16. Okay? So I'm just going to go times 7 there to bring back that number. Divide that now by 16. So that gives me 7.203125, which is equal to 7 and something. So I'll just subtract the 7. I'm left with the fractions of an inch. I'll multiply by 16 to get the numerator, which is 3/16. Okay. From there, I'm going to go ahead and remember it's a stairwell opening. We have the stairwell opening, so that's where I have to then try to use the unit run. I'm kind of going to do the reverse. So I just kind of write the formula standard at the top there. So if I'm trying to get the stairwell opening, I take the runs in the opening and I multiply by the unit run. Right, and then we normally add on the 3 inches. So we'll forget about that for a second there, just to avoid a problem. So now we want to find the unit run. So we have the stairwell. We can determine this, right, because we know the headroom and upper construction. So we can determine the runs in the opening. That's basically our next step, is determine the runs in the opening. Okay, or rises in the opening, same thing. Runs or rises is going to be the same. So let's do that next. We'll get the rises in the opening. And the way we get that is we take the headroom plus the upper construction, and then we divide that by the unit rise. So we can do that, no problem. So headroom is 80. Upper construction is 11.25. And the unit rise we just calculated to be 7 3/16. So we're going to use that number there, which is 1875. So we'll use the number that's going to be on the framing square. We'll forget about that one. Okay. So we're dividing by 7.1875 there. And that's going to give us the riser runs in the opening. So basically we're going 91.25 divided by 7.1875. Press equals. I end up with 12.6957 if we're rounding to 4 decimals, which I think is what we decided, right? That's the 4th digit. So the 5th one's going to determine what I do. If it's 5 or higher, I got to round it up. So it should be rounded up there. Now we have that number and we have that number. We're trying to determine the unit run. So that's basically step 4 here, is determining that unit run. We have everything we need now. We're just going to manipulate that formula. Stairwell opening is going to be on that side now. And that's going to be now divided, right? It was a multiplication, so now it's going to turn into a division of the runs in the opening. Okay, so stairwell opening is 130.3125, and we divide that by the runs in the opening, which you just determined here, so 12.6957, and we can plug that in the calculator. So 130.3125 divided by 12.6957, that gives us 10.264, which is going to be, subtract the 10, fractions of an inch, multiplied by 16 to get the numerator, so it's a quarter. So 10.25 for all our calculations. Forget about that number, okay? So let's just kind of fill this out here. Unit rise, so that's a good number and a good number, right? So I like that set of stairs. That's not a bad set of stairs. That's almost ideal, right? 7 3/16 as our unit rise, 10 1/4 unit run. We're meeting code, fairly comfortable. We're in that range, right? If we have 7.5 and somewhere near 10, we're doing pretty good there, right? So we're doing good there. Last thing they want there is the total run to finish this problem. So to get the total run, we take the number of runs and we multiply by the unit run. So number of runs, we have 16 risers, therefore we have 15 runs. So there's 15 runs multiplied by 10.25. That's going to give me my total run. So 15 times 10.25, that gives me 153.75. So 153 3/4. All right, so we divide that by 12. That's going to give us 12 foot times 12, 9 inches and 3/4. Okay? So we can write 153 3/4 here, or 12 foot 9 3/4. The unit run is 10 1/4. And then unit rise is 7 3/16. So again, I think most people hit that, right? It was a good number. So I know some people play around with this number. Whenever you divide by 7, take that whole number, check that math first, right? Like some people will round up or round down there. Remember, we always want to have this number to be between 7 and 7 7/8. So if you're below that, don't write that down over here. I don't want to see a 6 there unless we really, really have to. It can still meet code, but ideally we want to be between 7 and 7 7/8. So if we check the rule here, right? So the rule, we want to aim between these two numbers being between 17 and 18. So basically we're at 17, so that's 3/16 plus basically, so it's basically 17 and 7/16. If we added those two together, 17 and 7/16. We didn't ask to check the angle there, but we could check that angle fairly quickly, so we could just go second function tan brackets of 7.1875, which is the 7 3/16, divided by 10.25, which is that number, close the brackets, make sure I'm in degrees, press equals, so the angle there is 35. That's a perfect angle, really, right in the middle of kind of where we want to be. So 35.0304 actually. And again, I notice some people rounding up to the whole degree, probably not the end of the world, but I think it's sometimes a good idea to write down the decimals there, so we know, are we a little bit more than 35, a little less than, maybe I'm just too fussy there, but I think it's a good idea to include a couple decimals there on degrees, depending on where it is. So in this case, 35 degrees is probably good, but if it's 35.5, rounding up to 36 is quite the jump. So that's the number you're going to set your saw to cut the handrail. I think we should try to be a little more accurate than a whole degree. It is hard to adjust on a miter saw to basically like minutes, but when it's a half, let's kind of stick with it. Or just make a good habit of 2 decimals there, so we know what it is, right? So that's good for that one. Doesn't seem to be a better option. There's no need to do a better option there. That to me, that's good. Okay. This next one here, a few issues while marking. The first thing they gave you, given a floor to ceiling height of 7 foot 10 1/4. So a lot of people went with that. So that number there is basically 84 plus 10, so 94.25. Headroom is 72 plus 10, so 82. And then we have a 10 and 5/8. That's kind of a bad scenario though, but it's 10 and 5/8. So it's nice if that 5/8 would stick there, but 10 and 5/8 as our upper construction. That's stairwell opening right there. So 8 is 96 plus 10 is 106 and 9/16. So that's going to be 9 divided by 5/625. So 8 foot 10 and 9/16 is equal to 106.565. That's our stairwell opening. So basically same kind of math again. Looking for some different answers down here. Okay. So again, we'll start off by doing the same thing. I'm not going to write out the full formulas there, but I am going to write out the numbers. So again, if I look at a lot of people's homework, there's no structure to anything. It's like a disaster on paper. You need to try and get away from that. If you plan on, if you plan on running a business, being a foreman one day, you kind of got to be neat to a certain degree. Like my writing is ugly, but there's logic to what I'm doing, right? So if I come back, every time I do a set of stairs, there's logic. So from there, I can kind of memorize formulas. I can easily take off where I left off if I stopped. Because I'm writing down a little bit of information. A lot of people just have chicken scratch numbers all over the place. I'm trying to sometimes figure out where you went wrong. I give part marks if I can kind of figure it out. But even just for yourself, like school is one thing, the job is another. Again, like I said, if you're running jobs, you have a family, your life's busy, you're doing an estimate. Estimates are done at night. You start on a Monday, you might not get back to a Wednesday. The more you write down, it's easier to get going again. It doesn't take as long to get back in. You don't have to start over from scratch all the time. So a lot of people seem to think that writing too much is a problem. The more you write, the better, okay, in my opinion. So again, I'm just going to kind of put the numbers down. So number of risers. I'm going to use my total rise, which we don't have yet. So the total rise there, that's a little bit of a trick. A few people got that wrong, but floor to ceiling height is 94.25. So I basically have to take that ceiling height, which is 94.25, and I have to add on the 10 and 5/8, 10.625. And then that's going to give me my total rise. Can we see that? So if I go 94.25 plus the 10.625, so 104.875 is my actual total rise. So now I'm going to plug that down here. So a lot of people got that wrong, which is, like these questions are red seal questions, right? So the bad thing is putting our brain into pilot mode, right? We just did this problem where we're given total rise. We come down here, we don't even read. We just grab that number. That's what this is designed to do, is to make you stop and read. That's total rise. That's ceiling height. Did I get caught up on this the first time I did it? Yes, I did, right? The first time I did one of these assignments, I did the same thing. I ignored that word, and I went right to that word, and then I caught it after. I came back and reread it again when I was done and had to start all over. So make sure we read. That's a key word. Ceiling height to that point. So basically, we're trying to determine from the floor to the top of the floor, right? So from the first floor to the top of the second floor. Well, the ceiling height is to that point, and then we have to include the upper construction, right? So the 94.25 is to that point, and then we have to include this upper construction, which is the 10 and 5/8. That'll give us our total rise, which is what we want, which is 104.875. So we're going to make sure we don't get caught up there. So we're going to take our total rise, we're going to divide that by 7. So 104.875 divided by 7, that's going to be equal to 14, whatever. I don't care about the rest. I just want that 14. So some people might have rounded that to 15, but I'm going to stick with the 14 and see what I get. Right? It seems to usually work out. So 2 now, I'm getting the unit rise here. I'm going to take that 104.875, divide that by 14. So 104.875 divided by 14, that gives me 7.491, let's say, so that's 7 and, so 7/16, but I got to round it to 8/16, so 7.5, okay? Step 3 there, again, remembering that we're dealing with maintaining headroom, means the stairwell is existing, so I have to use the stairwell to get my my unit run. So the first thing I got to do is determine, so if I write down maybe step 4 here, to get the unit run, I got to take the stairwell opening, and I got to divide it by the runs in the opening, which I'm missing. So just kind of telling myself what to do next, right? So when I see a maintaining headroom question, I'm given the stairwell opening. I have to use that to get the unit run. So next step is getting the runs in the opening, or rises, right? Runs and rise and opening are the same. So it starts off by determining the number of rises, because I use the headroom plus the upper construction, which is a vertical number, divided by a vertical number, which is the unit rise. Right, so the headroom in this case is 82 plus 10 5/8, right? So that headroom is 82 plus the upper construction, which is 10 5/8. That gives me 92.625. I can divide that by the 7.5 that we just determined. So if I go 92.625 divided by 7.5, that gives me 12.35 rises / runs in the opening. Now I can plug that in down here, right? So I'm dividing by 12.35. Stairwell, right there it is, 106. So I'll put that down here, 106.5625 divided by 12.35 will give me my unit run. So 106.5625 divided by 12.35 gives me 8.628. Not very good. Way below code there, but above the old code, right? The old code used to be 8 1/4. It just changed to 10 there a few years ago. So I go minus 8 times 16. That gives me 10/16, which is 5/8. So the initial numbers here are 7.5 and then 8 5/8. Okay. So this number's good. This one here doesn't meet code. So it doesn't meet code. So obviously I'd want to see if there's better options there. So kind of what they're telling us to do here is take away one riser. Instead of going with 14, if we went with 13. So I might just kind of put up here option 2 here. And I'm going to say 13 risers. So basically what I'm going to be doing there, the first thing is going with 13 risers, right? So I was 1 is 1, 2 is going to be 2. So just trying to save some space there. So 2 is determining the unit rise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 104.875 divided by 13 now. And that's giving me 8.067, which is 8 1/16. That's no good, right? It's above code. Code for unit rise is a 7 7/8, right? From 4 7/8 to 7 7/8. So I'm just going to write that down here, though. That's what it's kind of asking for, kind of to compare. So 8 1/16 here. So then I'm going to get the unit run now. So step 3 is getting the riser runs in the opening. So I'm going to take the 92.625 and I'm going to divide it by 8 1/16. So I'm not going to write it down, but that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing step 3, rises in the opening. So I'm going to go 92.625 divided by the unit rise for that problem, which is 8.0625. Okay, press equals. I'm going to have 11.488, and we round to the 4th decimal. So it's a 3, but that's a 5, higher than 5, so I make it 4. So 11.4884 is what I'm going to write down there. And then step 4 is getting that stairwell opening. So I'm going to take the stairwell opening and then divide by that number. Okay? So stairwell opening is 106.5625 divided by 11.4884. Press equals, and we get 9.2756 there, which is 9 1/4. So we end up with 9 1/4 there. So that's still not meeting code. And this is not meeting code. So both are not meeting code. So that's better than that, right? To the original code for unit run. So if this is an older home, this would have passed code prior to 2020. Okay, this would have passed code prior to 2020. This one here wouldn't pass right now because the 8 and 16th, so we can't use that one. Basically, that's no good. So that's still not meeting code. Both of them, right, are not meeting code, but this used to meet code. This used to meet code. That does meet code right now. So adding a riser, so basically what we're saying there is option 3 is going with adding a riser. So we had 14, so now we're going to 15 risers. So 1 is going to be 15. 2 is going to be determining that unit rise. So the unit rise, right, is 2. So we're going to go 104. 104.875 divided by 15. That gives us 6.99, which is basically going to be 7. So minus 6 times 16. So it gives us 15/16. That's saying to round up to 16/16. So that's exactly 7 inches there. So unit rise down here at the bottom, if we're looking at adding a riser, is going to be 7 inches exactly. Okay. 3, we're going to have to determine a new rise in the opening. So we're going to go again 92.625 divided by our new unit rise, which is 7, which gives us a new runs in the opening, 13.232. 1, right? So if we're going 4 decimals, and then step 4 is using that number and basically taking our stairwell divided by that number. So 106. So step 4 is unit run. So 106.56 106.5625 divided by 13.2321. That gives us 8.05, which is 8 and 1/16. Right, so it's 0/16, but that's 5 or higher, so we got to round it up. So the unit run there is 8 and 1/16. So this never met code. Never met code. That's meeting code. So that's probably the worst scenario there, right? Never met code. Again, never met code. So the best option is the first one. Again, that doesn't meet code. So we probably can't necessarily use that for new construction, but if it's an existing job, we could look at maybe getting that grandfathered in, or we have to modify the stairwell opening, make it larger to make it work. Okay, so basically, by taking away 1 rise, we're maxing out the unit rise. By taking away or adding 1 rise, we're going below the old code, right? The old code. So both of those scenarios aren't going to help us. So we kind of have to stick with the first one. So in reality, it's not a good scenario either way.